Good morning. It's today again. Welcome back to Joseph's Reserves. I'm Joseph, and I store 20% of my income in the form of rare coins and precious metals. When people talk about stacking silver for prepping, they often focus on one extreme future, total economic collapse, where silver becomes everyday money again. But the reality is that silver can play several different roles depending on what actually happens in the economy. And those different futures can actually change how you should build your stack. Congratulations to Josie J. Jacobs for getting to my comments in my last video first. Thank you for the support. Go find her down in the comments to start a conversation. One of the biggest mistakes people make when planning for their future is preparing for only one outcome. Some people assume the financial system will always function normally, while other people prepare exclusively for total collapse. The truth is that the future will probably fall somewhere between those two extremes. That's why I like to think about silver in terms of three possible futures. Silver can function as a smart savings account that protects purchasing power, or an emergency fund that you can liquidate when life throws you a curveball, or potentially as a spending money in certain types of economic disruption. And once you start thinking about silver this way, you realize something pretty important. The type of silver that you stack may depend on which future unfolds. Before we talk about these possible three futures, it's important to understand something about preparedness. Prepping is often misunderstood as preparing only for catastrophic events. In reality, good preparedness is about building resilience against a wide range of possible disruptions, many of which are far more common than the dramatic scenarios people often imagine. Think about the types of financial disruptions people actually experience in their lives. Job loss is a major one. A sudden medical bill can create enormous financial pressure. A car breaking down at the wrong time can disrupt an entire household budget. Inflation can quietly erode savings over the course of years. And occasionally, financial institutions themselves experience instability or unexpected limitations. Preparedness isn't about surviving the end of the world, it's about building a system that helps you remain financially stable through these kinds of disruptions. When viewed through the lens, silver can be more than just an investment or a speculative commodity. It becomes a tool for financial resilience. Silver has certain characteristics that make it uniquely suited for this role. It's tangible, meaning it exists outside of a digital financial system. It's globally recognized, meaning it can be sold or traded almost anywhere in the world. It's divisible, meaning it can exist in both large and small units of value. And perhaps most importantly, it has thousands of years of historical precedence as both a money and store of value. Because of these characteristics, silver can serve several different roles depending on what kind of future unfolds. And that's why it's helpful to think about silver in terms of these three possible futures. The first and most likely future is one that we are already experiencing. In this scenario, global financial systems continue functioning, the dollars continue circulating, and the economy continues operating more or less normally. However, inflation gradually reduces the purchasing power of the currency over time. This is not a hypothetical scenario, it has been happening for decades. The dollar today buys significantly less than it did a generation ago, and the long term trend has been a steady erosion of the purchasing power. In this type of environment, silver functions much like a hard asset savings account. Instead of holding all of your savings in a currency that can be printed indefinitely, you convert some of that value into something with a limited supply. Silver mining requires real resources, real labor, and real time. It cannot be created instantly by monetary policy. Because of that, silver has historically maintained purchasing power across long time horizons. For many stackers, this is the primary role of silver. They're not necessarily expecting a sudden collapse or a dramatic economic event. Instead, they view silver as a way to preserve wealth in an inflationary environment. In this scenario, silver is not something you plan to spend in everyday transactions. It's something that you accumulate gradually over time as a form of savings that exists outside of a banking system. Because the goal here is efficient wealth storage and eventual liquidity, the types of silver that tend to work best are widely recognized bullion products. Government coins, generic rounds, and standard bullion bars are excellent choices in this environment. They are easily recognized by dealers, widely traded, and relatively easy to convert back to cash when needed. A balanced stack of coins, rounds, and bars works well because each format has advantages. Coins often carry strong recognition and trust, rounds can sometimes be acquired with slightly lower premiums, and bars allow for efficient storage of larger amounts of silver in compact forms. In the smart savings account future, silver simply becomes a way of preserving purchasing power while remaining relatively liquid. The second possible future for your silver is much more personal and much more common than people realize. Life is unpredictable. Even in reliably stable economies, households experience financial shock. A sudden hospital bill can require thousands of dollars immediately. A car might fail unexpectedly and need to be replaced. Insurance deductibles can appear with very little warning. Major home repairs can arrive at the worst possible moment. For these types of situations, most financial advisors, which I am not a financial advisor, recommend maintaining an emergency fund. Traditionally, this emergency fund is held in cash or a savings account that can be accessed quickly. However, silver can function as a secondary emergency reserves. Imagine someone who's been stacking silver for many years. Over time, they accumulate a meaningful amount of physical silver. That stack represents stored value. It may not be the first line of defense when an emergency appears, but it is wealth that can be converted into cash when necessary. If a major unexpected expense occurs, part of that stack can be sold to cover the cost. One of silver's advantages in this situation is liquidity. Precious metals markets are active almost everywhere. Coin shops, bullion dealers, even private buyers frequently purchase silver bullion. That means that a stacker can convert silver into cash relatively quickly when a financial emergency arises. Another advantage is the psychological. Because silver is not as instantly accessible as cash sitting in a checking account, it often avoids the temptation of everyday spending. Many people find that money sitting in a savings account can easily drift into normal consumption. Silver, on the other hand, tends to remain untouched until a deliberate decision is made to sell it. In this way, silver can act as a form of disciplined savings. It holds value quietly until the moment it's needed. If the emergency never arrives, the silver simply continues to serve its original purpose as a store of value. But if life throws an unexpected financial challenge your way, the stack becomes a financial safety net. For this scenario, the same type of silver used in the savings accounts future work extremely well. Coins, bars, and generic rounds are easy to sell, widely recognized, and generally liquid in bullion markets. Because the goal is efficient liquidation rather than small scale transactions, larger bullion formats are perfectly appropriate. What I would say about the specific types of coins that you want to buy for something like an emergency fund is that you want very low emotional silver to be the first to go. You don't want the chaos of an emergency like this to be coupled with having to sell your favorite pieces of silver. The third possible future is the one most often associated with prepping. And it's the scenario where silver begins to function more directly as money. However, even this future can appear in different forms. The first version is relatively mild. Imagine a future where inflation continues and silver prices gradually rise over many years. If someone accumulated silver when prices were significantly lower, that silver eventually represents much greater purchasing power than the dollars originally used to buy it. At that point, spending the silver becomes similar to spending money that has appreciated over time. In other words, you're spending yesterday's cheaper money in today's more expensive economy. Some stackers enjoy the idea of one day an ounce of silver purchased years earlier might pay for groceries, fuel, or other expenses in a way that reflects the increase in value. Spending silver in this way actually already takes place today. Many farmers at farmers markets or family owned businesses or small time vendors already accept silver and gold as payment through their businesses. And if a stacker has been stacking for many years, or even recently just longer than a few months, that silver may have a much lower dollar cost average than its value today. For example, my silver generally has a dollar cost average of around $30. So if I go to spend that silver, then I'm effectively saving the money that I would have spent on that item in the first place. Many business owners also stack silver, so you would be very surprised to find out how many are willing to take silver as payment. And finally, we've got to the future that's the one that most preppers imagine. In a severe economic disruption where trust in the currency is severely damaged, people may begin to look for alternative ways to exchange value. Historically, when paper currencies have experienced major instability, precious metals has often returned to circulation in informal markets. No one can predict exactly how such a scenario would unfold, but history shows that gold and silver have repeatedly served as trusted mediums of exchange when other forms of money were questionable. In either version of this third future, something is important within these transactions. The size begins to matter. Large silver bars are excellent for storing wealth, but they're not very practical for small exchanges. If silver were ever used directly in transactions, smaller units would become far more useful. This is where fractional bullion and constitutional silver become very valuable. Smaller pieces allow value to be divided into manageable portions, making them far more practical for small exchanges. For that reason, many stackers choose to include at least some of the smaller silver in their stack if they primarily accumulate larger bullion products. When you take a step back and consider these three possible futures, a pattern begins to emerge. Silver can serve multiple roles depending on what type of economic environment develops. Because of that, it rarely makes sense to stack only one type of silver. A balanced stack prepares you for several possibilities at once. Coins, bars, and generic rounds provide efficient wealth storage and strong liquidity for both a savings account and an emergency fund. Fractional bullion or constitutional silver offers the flexibility if silver ever becomes useful in smaller exchanges. This type of diversification within the stack allows silver to adapt to multiple economic conditions. Ultimately, the real strength of silver in a preparedness plan is its versatility. It can function as a long term savings, an emergency financial backup plan, or a potential transactional money depending on what the future brings. That flexibility is what has allowed silver to maintain relevant for thousands of years. And before we move on, I do want to talk about my coin bag that I have here. This is designed to carry a whole lot of silver coins. Here, you just watched me put $70 of face value into here, which is 50 ounces of silver. At today's spot price, that's valued of about $4,000. As you can see, there's a little strap here to put your hand in to help you carry it or keep it safe on you. And you can see that it has my logo and my sayings on it. If you're interested in this is at my website at josephsreserves.com. Feel free to take a look at this and all the other merchandise that's on that website. I just made my own line of coffee. Joseph's Reserves It's Today Again coffee. Most mornings aren't dramatic. They're quiet. You wake up, pour yourself a cup, and now you have a choice. Drift through the day or take hold of what's in front of you. That's really what this whole thing's about. Showing up, building good habits, staying disciplined in the small things. Whether that's stacking consistently, learning something new, or just being faithful with what you've been given. I put these words on every bag to remind myself first. Every morning is a gift. Not yesterday, not tomorrow, today. So take a breath, take a sip, and let's get to work. It's today again. You can now write me at Joseph's Reserves, 10160 Highway 242, Suite 800, number 401 in Conroe, Texas, zip code 77385. Make sure to include your information so I can write you back. If you like this video, be sure to go down and give it a thumbs up. Go into the comment section for any questions or comments. Share the video if you know anyone that might like content like this, and subscribe if you haven't already. But most of all, thank you so much for watching, and just remember, every ounce adds up, so no matter how small, just keep stacking.